But I think your mic is muted.
Oh no, really? I've been talking all this time. Classic. Okay, cool. I'll just start again. All right, guys. Well, welcome to the January Sketchfab live stream. And this month we want to try something different. So far you've been seeing our product demos. You've been seeing team members on these streams. And what we want to try and do now is make this a little bit more personal by showing you some of our prominent community members to give people like show like where they are, what drives them, talk a bit about their careers and how they do their work. And today I'm very happy to have Jasmin Habezai-Fekri with me. And Jasmin has been in our community for over 6 years. I just checked earlier today. It's been a very long journey together, Jasmin. It's amazing. And she has been super active in our community. She's been helping us with hosting and judging challenges for the rest of the community. She's been helping us write articles on the blog. She's been creating some commissioned models for special events, and like all these things I'll try and touch on later as well. And what we'll be doing is like having a bit of a chat about all these things. In the meantime, if you guys have any questions, you can leave them on YouTube and we'll come back to them later. So we'll try to answer as much as possible about that. The video will remain on our YouTube channel, so you can come back to it and watch it at another time or share it as you like. And that's the main thing. We're just going to have a great time and have a chat together here. And so, Jasmin, as I said, I checked earlier today. It's been about 6 years, and I still remember like seeing your work back in the day, and you caught my eye because you were also a Blender user at the time. Which has my special interest, of course. And so yeah, that's how things started. We've known each other for a long time, but maybe you can introduce yourself to our viewers and talk a little bit about the things that you do.
Yeah, well, hello everyone. Thank you for having me, and also thank you for this great introduction, Bart. Yeah, I'm Jasmin. I'm a 3D environment artist, currently working at Airship Syndicate. And yeah, as Bart mentioned, I was really active in the Sketchfab community since the start of my whole like 3D journey, and it was a very important part actually of me developing myself as an artist and sharing my work. And I think you can also see that in my Sketchfab account. I have a heavy focus on stylized art, everything that's very painterly, hand-painted textures. Nowadays, I'm more into PBR, but I really enjoyed showcasing a lot of my hand-painted work on Sketchfab, which was, my main focus at the time, and I still love to do that. So, yeah, that's basically what I do.
Excellent. Yeah, your hand painting is definitely what really shows on your Sketchfab profile as well. And so how and why did you get interested in that specific art style? Because it's a bit of a niche in the 3D world, right?
Yeah, definitely is, because I think my very first Sketchfab post was actually something that was an isometric living room. It was like something I did even before I got serious about 3D. It was when I was more into graphic design and illustration. And then when I was actually getting into game art, which was in the beginning of 2017, I was like looking into what games I was playing as a child, what games I was playing up to that point, actually in my teenage years. And all of those games were mostly very stylized and hand painted, which was, for example, World of Warcraft or Animal Crossing, even The Sims. Like all these games were very present throughout my life until that point. And I was thinking most of the time, how do these people even make these games, or like how does it work? And when I was getting deeper into that world, I realized, oh wow, I really want to actually make these type of textures and models myself that I kept seeing in these games, and most of them were hand painted and super stylized. So that's when I just started to find Blender, which was great because it was for free, and started to actually learn 3D and digital art at the same time, because before that I didn't really have that much of a connection to making art digitally. I was more of a traditional artist, and just the stuff you would do like in your teen years or at high school, like painting with acrylics or oil paints, and nothing like too serious in that sense. So like 2017 was the year where I was like, okay, I'm getting serious about this. I want to go to university for this, so I need to actually step up my game and learn everything in a short period of time to get into university and expand my skills quickly.
And how I think you started doing this like before university already. So how did you
Yeah.
teach yourself these skills?
I went on YouTube first, and I watched like a ton of random videos actually just about how to use Blender, how to make low poly stuff inside Blender, because I knew I wanted to make something that's game ready, and my idea back then of game ready assets was mostly that it has to be low poly and like not too much budget, but I didn't have any idea about like texture sets even, or like texture sizes or texture density and all this. So this came like with time. But back then I would just went on YouTube, and then pretty early on, I was already on ArtStation just looking around, because for my application at university, I needed an ArtStation account. And there I already discovered 2D concepts. And I was like, wow, these concepts are great. Like, and I saw some people also making them inside 3D. And then simultaneously at the same time, I was on Sketchfab as well, seeing other people making 3D models that are hand painted, also based on concept art. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to try to merge the stuff I see in the YouTube videos, which is like very general knowledge about 3D, and kind of connected with a project where I can apply those skills that I'm seeing in those videos and like recreate a 2D concept inside 3D, because I didn't really like following the tutorials one-to-one to make like something that the tutorial is showing, but I rather wanted to make something on my own with the knowledge from the tutorials, basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm still stuck at the tutorial stage, but maybe one day. Yeah. Hey, and another thing that is really impressive is how you've been raising your own profile on social media, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how did you do that? What's your secrets? It's.
I think it's being consistent, because when I started posting on Twitter, it was in the same year, like around 2000, like mid 2017. And back then, like nobody followed me. I was just kind of posting in my own echo chamber with like 10 people or something following me. And then I started using hashtags, and there were like specific hashtags, like I think even back in the day, Portfolio Day was already a thing. Where people shared like their artwork, but there was also Visible Women, which was focused on specifically women sharing their art who are working in the creative industry. And that kind of helped me to get my work more out there by being consistently active and sharing work in progress shots of the stuff I was doing, but also participating in these like kind of annual sharing events on Twitter, which are really helpful for getting your work noticed by other people, and
like
also discovering other
such.
artists. Exactly, yeah, that really helped me. And also actually seeing other artists too, because at that point I didn't really have a direct touching point with any artist. I didn't talk to any other artists because I just didn't know anyone. My network was non-existent. But through Twitter, I actually made so many friends who were either also studying at university or they were already working somewhere. And I was able to kind of get my foot into like the realm of other 3D artists doing the stuff that I'm doing, or doing something that I want to achieve at some point. So yeah, being just consistently active, talking to people, kind of just being active inside the community, and people will remember that and will like notice you, and kind of build like friendships from then on as well, which is great.
Yeah, I think what I've always seen on your channel, on your Twitter, is that you're very conversational, so you're like talking to everyone all the time. You're very approachable as well. And just you have like over 40,000 followers, I think now. So you're doing great, right? It's yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah, I'm sure it can be a job too. So you have to like balance your your energy a bit. Yeah. And so sure. We looked a bit at your like development. Where are you these days? What's keeping you busy now?
So mostly work is keeping me busy, but also I'm working on like collaborations on the side and on my own personal projects, but also trying to keep up with what's like new inside the 3D world, and like, I don't know, learning, for example, Unreal 5, or making my own scenes and kind of applying all the knowledge that I see like circulating around. But I'm also currently thinking about starting mentoring, because throughout the years, also being on Twitter and on Discord and also Sketchfab, I've got a lot of messages of people wanting feedback or wanting help or any type of critique from me, specifically also for stylized art. And I really enjoy giving that, but with work and everything going on, it's really hard for me to get back to every DM and like be as thorough as I want to be with giving feedback. So I thought about like setting up maybe something properly where I can actually have mentees and, you know, I meet up with them weekly, have a call or something, and have more of a sustainable way of helping people. Like I will still answer DMs and like try to help that way, but I want to make it like a more regular, organized thing where I can help people in the way I can.
Maybe you have a smaller number of people that you work with, but be able to give them much more attention individually. Then.
Exactly. Yeah.
That sounds great. I think that's yeah. We've seen other artists do the same thing, and I think it's a very popular, popular activity. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Hey, and so you mentioned you're working now. Can you tell us what you do?
I'm not allowed to say what exactly I'm working on because it's strictly in the air, but I'm working as an at Airship Syndicate. Yeah, I'm an environment artist there, and I'm having a great time with them. It's really fun, and I'm happy that I get to work with them because I actually started working full-time last year in May, and the same year I also finished university in February, and simultaneously to university I was always freelancing and doing like one-off things, and it's nice to now have like working full-time for a studio. I really like that experience so far.
Yeah, so bigger projects, it's really really nice. I'm sure. Excellent. Okay, well, let's make a segue into, like, from your career into your work a little bit. You already told us a little bit about your art style and your inspiration for that. Like, how would you describe your own style, like overall, like the kinds of scenes that you work on, etc.?
I think one of the pillar stones of my work is that it's very colorful. It's usually very bright and cheerful, because I think I tried sometimes to do something a bit darker and grittier, which was for my ArtStation challenge pieces, like the Sword and the Stone and the Merlin tree and stuff like that. And I enjoyed doing that, but I keep getting back to scenes where it's like, you know, very sunny and colorful. There's a lot of grass and like whimsical places and houses and architecture that I would like to visit, or other people would enjoy, like to be there. And I always just like to make spaces where it's cozy and you want to spend time in them. That's basically my main goal always when creating art, especially like in the past 2 years where, you know, the world is like everyone's at home all the time, and it's you know, not always a great situation around us. I tried to kind of replicate something that I like to see and be around in my art instead. So that's something I did from the start, kind of, and it kept evolving with my skills and my work. Like, the style is something that kind of grows within time. It's hard to like pinpoint how to develop it, but I think it came like throughout, like making several scenes and several projects and kind of seeing what my niche is and filling that niche.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the colorfulness, etc. And while I was putting together the intro reel we played just before the stream started, those two scenes, the sword and the skeleton on the tree, they were almost like a shock. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so dark. Is this Jasmin? Yeah.
It was my edgy face.
Brilliant. And so, like, once you start developing an environment like that, like, how does that work? Like, do you develop the entire thing yourself, or do you draw inspiration from other sources?
It depends. I have some projects where it was entirely based off on my own imagination and work, and some of them are on Sketchfab too. I remember back in the day I made a scene which was for actually, like, all of my university application pieces were on Sketchfab too, and for them I had to like develop something entirely by myself. Or even for my game projects at uni, I also made them by myself and like with a team together, and had to design them. And that's usually like a really different process than working off a concept, because what I still really enjoy doing is having a very solid concept that sets up a world and like a lore in itself, and then you can kind of jump off from that. Like this, for example, is something I made for university, which was based on like a game that we developed in a team. And he had to like sit down with my other artists and develop like the art style and you know, the environment. And my friend, she made the character. It's Svenja Rösner. And that was quite of a challenge, especially being at university. But for things like the Sword and the Stone, that one was based off a concept, and there was already like a underlying story and law to these concepts that I really enjoyed, and kind of then elevating those concepts to the next level inside 3D is something that's my favorite part about 3D, and having like that power to take really inspiring concepts and turn them into 3D. And that's what I still do, and it's something also that is also required at work and different jobs. And yeah, that's something I wanted to practice from the very start when I started 3D. But it's still fun to have your own designs and like get a prompt, for example, and then make something in 3D with that too, like just to practice design skills as well. But when you're a 3D artist, you kind of have to have some design skills too, because not everything that looks good in 2D and the concept works necessarily super well in 3D. So you do need to think about what this model looks like from behind or from other angles than just the one angle that you get.
I was wondering about that, because from time to time you do base your work on existing concept art, but then you have your imagination has to fill in the rest, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's actually a really fun task too. It's completely different designing your own piece, but it's still very challenging, and a skill that you will need later down the road for work, I think.
Yeah. And I'm always curious, like when you work on someone else's concept art, I'm sure you check in with them before you start, and you get their permission and everything. But how do they respond when they see their own work in 3D and with like new little elements added, etc.? Do you get feedback from them?
Oh yes, like for example with the King Arthur challenge, when I did this, Giulio Nicoletti, he was really excited that I was turning them into 3D, and it was also like part of the challenge. Like there's like this whole consent already from the concept artist that you can turn them into 3D. But even when there isn't like this typical setup of a challenge, I always reach out to the concept artist and always ask them for their permission if I can turn it into 3D, and if I'm allowed to post it also on social media, on my portfolio, because sometimes concepts are just made for the purpose of like, some concept artists have their own IP that they want to develop, or it's part of like a job that they did or something, and you always want to make sure that they are okay with you doing this in 3D. And 99.9% of the time, it is possible to turn them into 3D, and the artists are very happy to see their work inside the 3D space. So like I always got really positive feedback, and it's like exciting to them to see what happens when a 3D artist takes their concept and turns it into 3D. And if you're lucky and you have like a good open communication with the concept artist, you can also ask for feedback and like get their opinion on the piece and see if they have any ideas how to like bring their concept better to life, or if you have design questions and stuff. So I think that's
interesting.
Really positive to already have that open communication with the concept artist from the start.
Great, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, I think like half of the game is just asking their permission before you start. We have some issues sometimes where people just like take someone's work and they don't inform them, and then the artist finds out later. That's not a respectful way of treating someone's work, right? So you need to be more careful with that.
Exactly, yeah. That's really important.
Excellent. So, do you have any tips for people who are like looking to transform 2D into 3D? Like, is there a trick to it, or?
I think the trick to it is really studying the concept that you have and kind of pinpointing what are the key elements of this concept that are important to bring it into 3D and to keep those elements. Like, for example, the shape language that the concept artists use, or the color palette, or the scale of the asset. For example, in this case, when I made like props, I wanted to make sure that the scale is appropriate to what it was intended to be designed for. But I would also suggest not to get too hung up on trying to replicate the concept one-to-one. Like, don't sit there and be like, okay, the concept has like less details on the right side of this object, so I'm also going to just, do that and not think about it further. Or the concept has like some perspective, I'm going to try and replicate them inside 3D too. Like, just see the concept as like a blueprint of bringing like the 3D thing to life. Like, that's usually what concepts are. There's a difference between like concept art and illustration too, which I think gets a bit muddy for people sometimes. But technically concept art, like real concept art, is a blueprint to turn something into 3D in that case. So don't get too hung up on the small details. Just try to bring the vision to life and then problem solve throughout the way.
Brilliant. So probably use it as your inspiration instead of making a one-to-one conversion into 3D.
Because that's okay too, like if that's the goal you want to do. But I think for 3D, it's interesting that it works like 360 degrees, like all around, not just like from that
sure.
one
Some
angle.
drawings are not easy to convert into 3D because there's like perspective errors and things. Yeah, that's
exactly.
Great. All right. Thanks. Yeah. Hey, and so we're talking about your design process a bit already. Maybe you can expand on that a bit. Like, do you have a typical approach for your projects, or?
My main thing is I always have some sort of like huge reference board. Either I use Miro or PureRef, and then there I start just if I have a concept, for example, I start dissecting what's the key elements of the concept and what do I need to make for like kind of like a to-do list and a mind map in one. That's what I like to do, and then also like set the style that I want to do, the direction that I want to take. What's the main goals of this project? Is it like a deep focus on a specific topic that I didn't touch on yet, or do I want to solidify skills that I already have, but I'm not like 100% sure on them yet? And just have like a huge board of basically all my thought process put on the board, and also then cross-reference, like for example, other projects I did or useful articles from other artists that I want to kind of apply to my work, or workflows or inspirations from other projects. Just have like everything in one place, and then I can keep having that board open for the entire project, and also put like my work in progress shots in that same board. And then whenever I need to make like a breakdown of this project, I have the A to Z basically from this whole thing in one place, and I don't need to like scramble everything together if I want to understand what I actually did with this project.
Amazing. So you're documenting the entire thing while you're working on it as well. Oh, cool. And so when you say a board, you're actually like making an image on your computer, or like drawing where you have like your inspiration and your goals and your requirements, etc.
Exactly. Yeah, I use Miro. Miro is like a real-time online mood board. It's really great. Like even if you like do collaborative projects, I used it a lot during university too. You can share it with other people, and they can actively like access it, or like even change some stuff in the board, which is super useful. And I can just share it to friends too, and they can have a look at it. Or you can use PureRef, which is offline, and that it also has like similar like usability settings like Miro. But with Miro, it's really easy just to copy paste images into it. Also like do some notes and do like some mind maps and arrows and highlighting. Like it's a bit more extensive and fun to use, right? I think. Yeah. Exactly. It's great. I can really recommend.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a really interesting angle on preparing for a scene like that, and documenting it as well. I think that's very very cool information. And so you mentioned you're using Miro, you're using PureRef. What other tools are in your toolkits these days?
For 3D, it's definitely still Blender. Like I've not used any other 3D modeling program since that. Like dabbled a bit inside Maya.
I like that.
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna like leave Blender either. Like a lot of the people I knew throughout time also either swapped to Blender or are really intrigued by trying Blender. So I'm happy to see that development over the years. And other than that, I use Substance Painter and Designer, ZBrush for sculpting all of my like details. That's where I get most of my the shapes and like nice baking information from. And for hand painting, I also use Blender. Like I just go inside the texture painting mode and then paint everything inside there, which is great because I love to not having to swap between programs. I just like to have everything inside one program, and I love that. It's so great. Like if I could also like I might try sculpting inside Blender too, because it would be even better if I could stay for that inside Blender. But yeah, just from it, even just for texturing, it's great just to be inside one program and not having to export the maps.
I was wondering what you would do your actual drawing in, but so you do it directly in Blender too on occasion.
Yes. It's all inside Blender.
I had a long list of questions about your Blender use, but I think you like wipe that out immediately, so that's great. Yeah. it's
Oh,
interesting that Blender is getting better and better, and it's no ZBrush, but it does really good
yeah,
sculpting. Of course, it's
definitely.
no substance, but you can do really nice texturing, etc. But you have everything in one place, right? That makes it really
Yes,
comfortable to work with. Brilliant.
it
Okay,
really is. I love
and
that.
do you have any like specific features that help you the most in Blender that you don't find in other tools, for example? Or
I think all of the modifiers that exist in there, I realized that when talking to friends who use other 3D programs, there are so many different modifiers that you can just stack without issue and like apply things and hide them and stuff like that. I use them on a daily basis. I can't go without them. And then seeing like that some 3D programs don't have that many modifiers that are that easy to like use and are not destructible is so great. Like I love how non-destructible the whole workflow inside Blender can be through the modifiers. And
yeah, if you
I'm
know what you're
also
doing, it is.
exactly yeah. It's I can't do anything without them. But I think it's still by far my favorite setup is the texture painting tool because it's so accessible. It's so easy to do. You can tab out and change something inside your model inside edit mode and then go back into texturing and I just love it. It's I think it's by far one of the like really powerful tools inside Blender that I still love to use.
Excellent. Yeah, I did watch one or two of your live streams back in the day. I think you did some on Twitch and
Yeah,
not so much anymore. But that was always really. It has like this Bob Ross vibe to it when you're like just painting a bit and talking a bit. It's really enjoyable.
yeah. I definitely felt that way.
Okay, cool. And do you still use Blender for your work, or do you need to use other tools for that now?
No, I still use Blender. Actually, for every job and freelance gig I had so far, I was able to use Blender without an issue. Nobody objected it. I even had people in my team before at other positions where they also used Blender or they're interested in using it. Even at Square Enix, I also use Blender. So it's getting more and more accepted, I think. And
Mhm.
because I remember back when I started 3D, people were telling me that it's going to be a huge issue for me to find work because I'm using Blender. But it turns out that at the end of the day, most places just care about the end result. And if it's like
Mhm.
done well, then it's okay
Right.
that you're
Yeah.
using Blender and they're even interested in hearing more about it. So it's,
That needs you to be a good
I'm glad
artist
to
first,
see
right?
it. Exactly, yeah. Like that's the whole thing. Like the tools don't matter that much if there's like the actual skill and the knowledge about how to use them. Because 3D programs, you can apply a lot of that knowledge onto other 3D programs too. So it's not like you're unhireable or you can't work anywhere if you use a
Mhm.
different 3D package. Because not every studio also uses Maya, for example. Like it's gonna be something you need to learn or just that's just part of our job, I think.
Yeah, and it's easier to exchange data between them anyway. So it's
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks. I think I have to stop talking about Blender at some point because we need to go back on the on the
I
Sketchfab
don't
thing.
mind it. I
So
like
yeah.
Blender a lot.
So yeah. So as I said, you joined Sketchfab in 2016, and
Mhm.
how have you been using the platform? I mean, obviously you shared your work there, but also was it like part of your education and development? Or
Mhm.
can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, it definitely was a huge part of me learning about 3D because first I found so many artists that I didn't know of, and then also was able to not only find those artists but also see really closely how they make those models, or you just like see the wireframe, the texture maps, the texture density, all these things that you always wonder about when you see just the final render, but a lot of people don't like maybe full breakdown of it in screenshots, but having it actually in real time helped me so much to understand
Mhm.
how topology works or how specific topology on specific objects can be done or should be done, or just seeing like the differences between how other artists work between each other as well, or having the opportunity to see all the texture maps and diffuse or with the lighting, just having everything on your disposal like straight away in like one
Mhm.
viewport is just amazing. And I kept saying to other students too that you guys that everyone needs to like go on Sketchfab and if they want to understand 3D and understand like how different maps work, or like what topology is, or tricount and all this stuff, you can really get a good grasp of that very quickly when you're on Sketchfab. Like for example, I remember back in the day, one of my, like, it still is my favorite artist, is Glenn Fox, and I think one of the first models that I saw on Sketchfab was his Tiki Treasure piece, and I was like, oh my god, how did he make this? Like, this is amazing, it's beautiful. And then I was able to like actually go into wireframe and see like how efficiently this was made, and then also go on the diffuse of this and see, wow, that the lighting actually does a lot for this piece too, and it looks so much prettier even with the lighting, but also the hand painted textures in this are so pretty. And just being able to explore a model this way as a new person to 3D is invaluable to me. And also seeing like what the try count of this is in total for a scene like this, it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're opening the inspector view here, because some of our viewers may not be too familiar with that. So on most of Sketchfab models, you have the little inspector button, or you hit the I key, and it will open this mode where you can browse the different channels. You can view like all kinds of aspects of the model. You can like there's a 2D and 3D view as well, so you can like move over the model and see where it appears on the texture map, for example. So that's a really useful thing if you want to like really dive into a model and explore how it's created. We did not have that back in 2016, though, right? So it was like we did not have downloads at that time. We did not have the inspector. That only came a few years later.
Yeah, I think back in the day it was just the wireframe mode. Maybe I think that was the only thing I was able to look at, which was already like super helpful, because seeing like, you know, that's on my own model, for example, but like just being able to see how like nice topology looks, and like, I don't know, how dense does somebody model a leaf compared to a tree or whatever. It just gives you like a much better idea about these abstract ideas that you just read about, and being able just to see and almost touch it is great.
I think, like, thinking back of how we developed this, at some point we had introduced downloadable models, and then we talked to people downloading stuff, and we learned that the main reason for downloading models was to study them. So we were like, aha, you know, that this is why people need that. So that's why we added the inspector view on top of that. So it was mostly driven by students, actually, who needed to have access to that kind of information. Yeah.
That's great, yeah. And I like it how even people who maybe don't want to put their models up to download, they can still have like this inspection viewer there, so people don't miss out on that aspect, even on models that, you know, can't be downloaded.
Yeah, and of course you can fully disable it as well if you're not comfortable with sharing like the ugly details of how you've made your work, because sometimes it looks better on the screen than in the geometry, right? It's
yeah, exactly.
Awesome. All right. So this really helps you like develop yourself as an artist and share your work then, right?
Definitely, yeah. And a lot of people also found my work through Sketchfab, especially when I was getting started, and you know how you guys give out staff picks that really helped me also with getting visibility too. I think, like, I remember how excited I would get every time I would get a staff pick. It's like just this little bit of like recognition you get, and some validation too, which is always important and nice to have, I think, from time to time.
Yeah, and it's getting more and more important now that we're growing. I mean, there are so many people seeing your work as an artist. Yeah. It's very rewarding, right? It's I can imagine.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks. So you showed us the like some of Glenn's work. Is there any other work on Sketchfab that you're really into?
Yes, another artist I really love, especially in terms of hand painting, is Raw Lungs. He does a lot of great hand painted work, and I'm still always in awe when I see it, and I come back to it quite a lot, especially for pieces like this where it's just purely hand painted and it's like no lighting and almost no post processing. It's just amazing to like be able to zoom in to the closest particle possible and like see every single brush stroke. I just love being able to do that with so many pieces that I love, that inspire me. Like, I also remember that this piece really inspired me back in the day, and still does. It's amazingly well done, also with like just a little bit amount of post-processing to it. It's just makes everything pop a bit more and just adds to the gloomy feeling, which I love. Because like a lot of hand painted works get also uploaded to Sketchfab because you can just easily display the model like with the base color like this too, but you can also just, you know, make it stand out a tiny bit more with some post processing without even having to add any lighting to it, which I think is great.
Nice. Yeah, I remember some of those models. Does he still post a lot of work?
I think the most recent was this one, but I didn't see anything in a while on Sketchfab. On ArtStation, I think he had some newer pieces, which were done
people
in
come and go,
Unreal.
but fortunately, the
Yeah,
work stays.
exactly.
Yeah. All right. Hey, and so we talked a bit about your career and your development, etc. But you've always also had like a career in the Sketchfab community, right? You've been helping us with all kinds of activities. I mentioned you helped us judge some challenges. You ran the hand painted food challenge at some point, which I think was to this date one of our most successful challenges ever. Yeah. Also one of the most delicious challenges ever. So that's yeah. I think we should do it again at some point. It's been 2 or 3 years, I think.
Oh yes, that'd be great.
So that was good fun. Yeah, I'll add a link to that to the YouTube description so people can visit that later. Abby, maybe you can drop a link in the YouTube chat for people now. That could be great. And so while on the topic of 3D food, at some point we were celebrating the Sketchfab's birthday, and we asked you if you could develop a model for us, right? Can you talk a little bit about that one? You know what I mean, right?
Yeah. No, this was such a great honor for me to like connect my hype for food and making a cake for that 7-year anniversary. It was an amazing experience because I remember I first had to like sit down and also think what type of cake would be cute to make, and also like with the restriction I had. But I just thought, okay, let's just go with a typical like vanilla sponge cake with some very iconic blue icing on it. So I was really happy that I was able to make this model for you guys. And what was even more amazing, I guess I can mention that already. I'm sure you wanted to segue into that too, that you guys sent me the actual cake in real life to me, which was still to this day one of the most amazing presents I've ever got. Like I was so shocked to get this cake that I made in 3D in like real life. I couldn't believe it.
It was one of the best projects to do too, because I remember I had to find a cake baker in Köln in your city, and we found a couple. I talked to them and I said, "Well, can you make this?" And they were, "Yeah." And then finally, I found this woman who owned a tiny shop, and she said, "Well, can you send me a picture?" And I said, "Well, I can do better than that." So I sent her a link to your Sketchfab model. Yeah. And she was like, "Oh, this is so great! It's amazing!" And she looked at it from all sides, etc. And she like gave it her own interpretation, and then shipped her the cake. Yeah, that was brilliant. It was really fun.
That's so sweet. Yeah. I guess Sketchfab is great for that too. If you want to commission cakes or I don't know, specific objects, you can just send that as a reference, and people won't.
Yeah, I'm thinking we need more cake. Yeah. All right. Well, enough about that. I'm only getting hungry here. And so the last thing I wanted to touch on for your Sketchfab activities was your role in what we call the Women on Sketchfab series.
Yes.
Can you share a few thoughts on that?
Yes, the Women on Sketchfab series was really important to me. I was so happy when Abby actually reached out to me to do this opportunity with her and this whole blog series, because the thing is, on Sketchfab there are so many artists, but I felt like it was such a cool cause to actually highlight the women that are on this platform and who are a minority, I would have to say. Even in the 3D world at the start when I started out, it was so difficult for me to find other women who do 3D, and as soon as I did, I was so excited and happy to see people who are doing the same, thing as me, or are like there where I want to be, out there thriving and like being inspiring. So I thought it was important to also give women on Sketchfab like a space to show their work and highlight their work and also get their work more out there. So I specifically was more responsible for finding people who are in game dev or doing 3D work for games specifically, anything that's also very stylized and colorful. And I was so happy to talk to many different women who were either students or they already were working somewhere, who were working in games or VR, or like a really broad range of people from all across the world. And to this day, it's like, again, one of those experiences that I'm really happy that I did. And I was able to talk to so many people just because of Sketchfab too, and seek so many different artists out and give them just to read about how they also even got to the point that they are now, I think is really inspiring for other people to read about too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really great series. So we'll add links to that later as well. So this
Yes,
is,
definitely.
as you may have surmised, it's a series of blog articles that we produce together with our community or with our group of Sketchfab masters that Jasmin was a member of as well. And it's a very wide, covers a very wide range of arts. So we have the game devs, but also scientific use, and we have. I think we had an item on a woman who works in the British Library, and she was digitizing books and sharing all that. And so we're really trying to cover all kinds of use of 3D by women in this case, and we had very good response to it as well. And yeah, we're still looking for more people to cover. Obviously, it's not always easy because we can't always tell from a username if you're a man or a woman. But if you're interested and you have an interesting story to share with us, you can always reach out, and we'll be happy to help you get that produced with our masters and our own team as well. So, all right, and then I have one or two more questions, and then I'd like to switch to the YouTube channel to see what kind of questions we've had so far. But I think now that you're like in front and center in the game dev industry, like what are some of the developments or changes that you've been seeing, or like what excites you for the next couple of years?
I think what I'm really excited about currently is seeing the rise on stylized games and also stylized art in general, like compared to 3-4 years ago where stylized art was, not really that present maybe in the art that people would create, especially in 3D or like in games. Nowadays, there are so many stylized games being either announced or developed, or people also being really interested in the style. That really excites me for how many more games in like that are apart from like realism will be developed or come out and like inspire more people to also delve into other art styles and try something different and unusual maybe that we didn't see before in games. So I'm really happy about that. And that I think that's also a development that I see, especially in indie games too, but also AAA games are taking more the risk as well, I think, to go more for the stylized route. So I'm really happy to see that.
Right. Move away a bit from photorealism and explore more interesting areas sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super excited about that.
Well, that's
and
good
I'm
news
also
for you, I suppose.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'm sorry, but I interrupted you. You wanted to say one more thing?
Oh yeah, no, oh, good. No, I just wanted to say I'm also interested to see how everything develops, like with Unreal 5 and like the whole what like poly count really means anymore, and how we will work with that as artists too. Because I know from like my group of artists that I interact with, we are like kind of excited about the fact that you might not need to topologize anymore and just can throw in your sculpts inside engine and it will be fine. I'm interested to see how that develops and how that might change our workflows and how we work and what our priorities will be in the future, instead of like focusing on performance and stuff like that. But that's something that's still in the process, so I'm just going to observe that and continue doing what I do.
Did you see the Matrix demo by any chance?
Yes, that was really impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive if you don't have to worry about poly count and performance anymore, right? And it just works.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be interesting. Like, I don't know about stylized stuff because a lot of it is dependent on like shape language and exaggerated shapes. So I feel like that'd be really neat that you can just have heavier meshes to exaggerate the shapes even more, or like add the detail where you want it without having to worry about performance. But yeah, we shall see.
Cool. All right. Well, we're looking forward to it. That's an interesting perspective to see that, like the stylized arts rising in game dev as well.
Yeah.
All right, I have a couple of questions from our YouTube channel, and I'll just like pick them one by one and give you a chance to respond to it. So the first question is from Game Dev Podcast, who asks, Jasmin, what is your favorite podcast where you've been part of in the past? I think it's kind of like
that's a tricky question because it's coming from Game Dev Podcast. Well, I really enjoyed being part of Alex Beddoes' Game Dev Podcast. Alex is a great guy and he does a lot of really good podcast content, so I love that. But apart from that, I also did a podcast started last year actually with a friend of mine called Ashley Wade, and it was called All Inclusive. And there we were inviting a lot of a big variety of game devs, and we're talking about their background and how they got into games, because we were really into highlighting like all aspects of game devs while also showing how diverse the industry really is. And that was a really fun project. We kind of put it on hiatus right now because life has gotten really busy for both of us, but I hope we can pick that up again at some point. But yeah, being on podcasts is really fun to me. I really enjoy talking to people and getting different perspectives. So I hope I can be part of more in the future. And I'm grateful for the ones I was able to be on up to this point.
Excellent, thanks. Next up, Unity Tricks. They ask, is a sketching background necessary to replicate 2D into 3D? And how do you visualize the perspectives when you convert 2D to 3D?
I would say it's definitely not necessary to be an amazing traditional artist when you go into 3D. Like I personally wasn't. I'm still not really into 2D painting or concepting in that sense, and I really enjoy doing it inside 3D. So don't worry about that. You don't have to be a born master at that. Everything you can learn it. Just be open to learning some art fundamentals like color theory or composition and things like that. But those, I think you will learn with time, also analyzing concept art or getting feedback or just deep diving into those topics when you're in the 3D world already. And in terms of figuring out perspective, that one's tough. I usually start out with what I see in the concept and try to fit it to that. And as soon as I realize that the proportions feel really unpleasant or weird in a sense, I try to find reference for what I'm doing and then kind of fit it more to my real life references or something that is more in line with what would be true to reality than what I see in the concept. So as I said, don't get too hung up onto the concept and what it's doing there if you feel like you're getting stuck.
Okay. All right, thanks. Last question. We saved the easiest question for last. Not really. Konrad Slavinsky asks, could you break down one of your hardest or most interesting scenes that you've made? We don't have to take a ton of times, but maybe just pick one scene and talk to us about it for a few minutes.
I can maybe go back to one of my, it's probably one of the older ones that I have. It would be still interesting to talk about because I'm really nostalgic about it. Yeah. But I remember that this piece was one of the first bigger dioramas that I did back in the day, and it was based on this amazing concept by Mimisu. And I just love the design of it and the shape of this whole building. I feel like maybe someday I might redo it again in 3D with my current skills. But as you can see, I kind of captured the essence of it, but I didn't do it completely one-to-one. There are some inconsistencies, and looking back at it now, I feel like I could change a lot about it. But back in the day, I was so intimidated by this piece because there were so many aspects to it, this huge piece of rock, and then the building itself had so many little details to it that were kind of difficult to me to model back in the day. So I had to really sit and think what this looks like from the front, from the side, from underneath, because I didn't want to restrict the view too much. And I think even at that point in SketchUp, there weren't that many restrictions to what people can and can't see. I remember when the the limited camera view was introduced, and I was so happy about that because then people wouldn't be able to look at the ugly underneath of my models. But at this point, I wanted to make sure that everything looks kind of neat and tied and into one art style together. So that was kind of daunting for me. And I think for the time and for the skills I was at the point, it was I did a good enough job, and it really helped me to think a bit more grand and bigger and like dare to make bigger scenes and not just stick to like single props, because I think it was also one of those models that kind of ignited my love for making actual environment pieces or bigger dioramas that people can explore. So, but yeah, the biggest challenge of this thing was actually like modeling it and keeping it consistent and pretty and reminiscent of the concept, while also thinking about the restrictions that I had at the time in terms of skill too.
Mm-hmm. There's another question that kind of touches on this by Sade Collins, and they ask, what tips do you have for not just copying a concept one-to-one in terms of texturing, since you mentioned that before? And you talked a bit about like the scene, and that like on the backside it's different, etc. Of course, but the final visuals they're slightly different as well, right?
Yeah, like especially in terms of texturing, I can say that because for example, in this concept, the texturing was pretty nice, but if you would just do this inside 3D, you would have a lot of just solid colors and a lot of the spaces with no detailing. And that's fine if that's the art style you want to go to. But in that case, I would say just do it consistently everywhere. But in my case, I just wanted to have a more hand-painted style and adding a bit more detail and highlights and shadows to the general feel of it, so it doesn't feel too comic-esque 2D, but it has more of like a stylized, maybe even like similar to like World of Warcraft. Obviously, this is not there yet, I think, style-wise, but that's why I was at least trying at the time. And then trying to apply that to everywhere. So I was looking for references for rock. I was looking for references for like something plasticky or for wood in that style that I want to do. And that's a similar thing that I did also with my more recent pieces, like for example the challenge piece from ArtStation. Here the concept was also very brushstroke heavy and didn't have that many details, but I knew for sure that the material of this gem is very iridescent and reflective, so I was looking for a lot of references in that case and trying to just replicate the main characteristic of this rock and the stone and the metal material onto this model while also simplifying it. And I think through these projects where I was trying to not replicate the concept one-to-one, but also try to make the materials pop out more and be recognizable, that's where I started to develop my approach and how I make my textures and not just copy what I see, but rather try to push the materials that you see and the concepts to another level, but also try to stay consistent. That's why it's important to have like a solid reference gathering process, to like have references for art style, to have references for the materials, not only references of the materials inside other 3D models, but also inside like real life. That's why I did also the whole like food thing, because I was just studying materials and all the reference I had for the food things were actual real life photos and nothing like 3D or stylized that I've seen being like done. Like it's hard to find an egg reference inside 3D or like inside a game. So I was just looking at a real life egg and trying to replicate that as good as I could, while kind of getting rid of a lot of the hyper detailing. And that's why I ended up with like a stylized version of an egg and a piece of toast. So I think having that kind of practice and applying that to your models helps a lot to keep it consistent.
Okay, thanks.
I hope that helped.
Last question, because we need to start wrapping up in a few minutes. This question is by Simon Kratz, and you know him from your time with the Masters as Simon. And he asks, what was the most out of comfort zone piece of art that you did in the last couple of years?
I think I would still say it's the Fate of Merlin piece with the skull. I'm just gonna try and open it. It doesn't seem to open. There we go. Because it had a skull, like a lot of like the whole skull face was really intimidating to me because it was a humanoid skull, and I really dislike doing anything that's like with humans and people, and like that's why I do love to do environment art. But doing the skull was really challenging to me because I had to like actually look at real life skulls and like try to replicate that, and I almost felt like a character artist doing this. But it was great. Like it really pushed me to do something that's on one hand more gritty, on the other hand also humanoid related in some shape or form. So yeah, it was a great experience. And I'm really happy with the outcome of it. Like I had more fun with it than I expected, to be honest. And I realized, okay, I'm not that bad at doing stuff that's related to human shapes. And then for my bachelor's degree, I actually did like a whole hippo statue, which had a lot of humanoid hands and feet and everything. And I was like, okay, yeah, I can actually do this when it's like integrated into an environment. It's not too bad and too daunting. So I kind of overcame that fear, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I have to say, I'm not surprised you picked this one. It was definitely a bit of a shocker when I went through your portfolio this week. I love it, but it's not the bright work I'm used to. Yeah.
It's true, yeah, it stands a bit out.
All right, I think that wraps up the questions that we have from our community. Unless, is there anything else that you would like to share with us before we say goodbye to everyone?
No, I think that's it. But I'm super thankful for everything that Sketchfab has done for me throughout my 3D career, and I'm really excited to see what else Sketchfab does and keep following. Even though I'm not a part of the Masters anymore, I'm happy to be still active in the community and chat with you guys whenever. So thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Jasmin, and we really appreciate that you're taking the time to talk to us, even though you have such a busy life outside of Sketchfab these days. It's really appreciated, and we hope to see you around in the future again as well.
Anytime.
So, cheers. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for everyone who was watching as well. We hope to do this again next month, so we'll be inviting another great artist to have this kind of conversation with. And until then, that's it for us. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, Jasmin. Cheers.